Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, another entry here based on one of your suggestions, at least in some ways a little bit loosely, because I was looking up information about a suggestion on a toad, and while I didn't quite find that information up front, it did lead me to this other cryptid that involves a very menacing toad or set of toads of some sort. So when I was looking at this information, I found it to be so fascinating that I definitely wanted to share with everybody here, and it has to do with this. You're looking at a drawing or a picture of it here, and it's known as the Wuhnan Toads. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but yes, they are a gigantic set of toads that apparently live in a portion somewhere in China. So lots of good information to share, including some actual sightings of these toads, some documented sightings. So here's all the information tied to this. So what are these Wuhnan toads? Well, they basically are toads that are larger than life, so much so that they practically dwarf even humans themselves. Much like my last video, where I was talking about the mosquitoes, the giant mosquitoes that are basically just a larger set of mosquitoes than their smaller cousins. Same concept here. As far as how they look like, all they are just toads like you and I would normally see anywhere in this world, but multiplied in size by much larger items. And then also they seem to have a very hyperactive appetite of some sort, so much so that they are known to actively hunt the areas that are around their lakes or their location, and then even then pursue humans too. So unfortunately, those people that live near the habitat of these toads, of these Wunan toads, they are absolutely on the menu list when it comes to the toad's favorite set of foods. Where they're located at seems to be a place called the Hubei province of China, which is by a place called the Bao Fung Lake. So if you happen to be in that area, then you're somewhat in luck, at least on the cryptid side, because then you'll be closer by to their location. And apparently they've been there for quite some time. It seems like they have become a mythological creature of some sort, a local lore that people know about in those locations. And so much so that they have a great fear of them and also a great respect. Like they also make sure that they're not doing anything that would, let's say, intimidate these creatures other than, trying to make sure they can get rid of them in some places. Now, as far as those two sightings, there's two of them, in fact, that have occurred involving multiple people, and both of them with almost disastrous results. The first one happens to be with a set of fishermen. These are the type of people that are there by that lake that run into these toads most common. It makes sense. I mean, when you're dealing with fishermen, their whole lives are essentially out in the sea, capturing those fishes, selling them for their market, or gathering them for their family, who knows. But they seem to have the most common occurrences with these Wunan toads. And then one of them that stands out, you have to go to 1962, not too far back, but still couple of decades or so back, and apparently there were so many of these attacks by these Wunan toads because, again, they have a ferocious appetite. You can imagine what that leads to, where these creatures, they're not docile. They're not going to be just sitting on a lake essentially just sunbathing. No, essentially they're going to protect their territory, and then when it comes time to hunt, they're going to actively hunt too. Frogs and toads, by the way, are carnivorous. I mean, if you ever have a chance, look online. People post these videos of some sort, these weird ones, where they show these toads essentially eating or being fed live animals. And these toads have no qualms. They have no reservation about eating other animals. I mean, they will eat rats, they will eat grasshoppers, of course, they'll eat practically anything. As long as it can fit in their mouth, they will absolutely eat it. And the way they attack is pretty ferocious, almost like a snapping turtle of some sort. They'll just essentially lunge immediately, very quick speed, almost deceptive when it comes to their size and their tiny legs. You would think that something like that wouldn't move so fast, but yes, they do. And then boom, that animal is gone. So apparently that has been happening there in that location for quite some time. So much so that in 1962, these fishermen decided to do something about it for the safety of their family, and then for also their ability to gather fish. They decided that they were going to go on the attack. And this involved getting a large group of dynamite, those sticks of dynamite, and then chucking them right into the lake of that Bao Fung Lake, supposedly where these toads again live in that area. So they did this, but much to their chagrin, if you can believe it, it not only did not prevent these toads from attacking, but it seems to have brought out their quote-unquote leader. It seems like there was even larger toad, more terrifying, more evil, at least according to their standards, than the other toads that they've run into before. So if they were dealing with, let's say, some of the menacing toads that they thought were pretty bad before, no, in this case, here they are dealing with the mother, I guess. And this one, they even have a name. They gave the name of it as Chan. So this new, I guess, mother toad of some sort, it decided it was having enough of these attacks, and it decided to pursue all these fishermen, not just on the lake, not just to the shoreline, but also 90 feet beyond that period. Imagine a sight like that. You have something like this, larger than a car, using its speed, its ferocity, to come straight at you. And then this girth, I mean, you see, this toad is gigantic. Imagine something like that chasing you, and you absolutely understand how frightened these fishermen were. No other indication whether they were able to kill any of these toads. Seems like it wasn't, but that was one of the occurrences that stood out. The other one actually happened in 1987, and it was tied to an expedition that a set of students or scientists there at Peking University decided to do. And there were 9 young scientists that decided they wanted to not necessarily hunt these Wuhnan toads, but instead try to capture them, tried to capture footage of them, so that way they could show the world exactly the evidence tied to these enormous creatures. And so there they were. They set up camp somewhere within that lake. They brought along a lot of video cameras, I guess state-of-the-art stuff back then from the late 1980s. And cut to a little while later, and sure enough, they started to see something near the shoreline. It was described as 3 enormous creatures slowly but surely swimming up to the scientists. And then whenever those things got closer, they were able to discern that yes, these were these toads, and they were able to see that these toads had this weird pale skin of some sort, and its mouth, which is probably its most frightening feature, they were able to estimate that it has about a 6-foot wide maw. So absolutely gigantic. This is the kind of stuff where again it could swallow a person whole. And so to ensure that they could not, I guess, do anything dangerous to these toads, they sat in that boat, I guess, absolutely still, making sure that they were not attracting any attention to themselves. It didn't work because these 3 toads still came up to their location, and even then, whenever it seemed like nothing was going to happen, it was a little bit too late, at least for their camera, because what happened next is one of these toads, not realizing that they were going to, instead of trying to obtain a human, they obtained an inanimate object. It unleashed its tongue. Imagine that, like a snatch of some sort, like an actual whiplash, or lash, snatch, a lasso of some sort. It grabbed the tripod with the camera that one of the students had, and then immediately put it back into its mouth. Just quick, as the devil, like it's just maybe a second or so that happened. And when that occurred, everyone of course was freaking out with those scientists. They imagine that they just ran away at that point. But what they heard later apparently sent shivers down their spines, because once this Wuhnan toad realized that what it had in its mouth was not prey of any kind, it was some kind of inanimate object, that's when they heard something involving a horrendous guttural shriek. from the throat of that toad. So that was the first instance, I guess, that someone would have heard such a shriek from them. But unfortunately, that camera, once it was lost, it also took away the footage that it was capturing of these toads. So had it survived, it would have been a great instance, something proof, something actual factual stuff that would showcase these toads in all of their glory. But even ever since then, there hasn't been really other sightings with proof that's needed. I mean, apparently there were other circumstances where people ran into these toads, but again, nothing in terms of anybody being able to capture anything on camera, anything on video, nothing along those lines. In fact, it's been said that such reports, such sightings have actually dwindled down to the point that even most recently there have been none. But still, the idea is that these toads, these Wuhnan toads, may still be within that Bao Fung Lake there in that portion of China. So much so, again, that these creatures are part of the lore, that they're involved in a game called Alice Madness Returns. And here you're looking at a picture of one of the toads within that game. Even the character Alice describes them as being one of the largest frogs that she's ever seen, but it could also be because apparently in that portion of the game, the caterpillar within the story shrinks Alice down, so it makes it seem as if these toads are larger than life. But still, it would be reminiscent of the size ratio compared to the real life Wuhnan toads that someone runs into. But that's it. That's all the information truly tied to these bizarre, real life, gigantic toads of some sort. If anyone has any more information about these menacing creatures, definitely something that if someone comes across them, it's not advised to try to get close, because again, these are carnivorous creatures. They absolutely hunt people, and then you don't want to end up as any kind of prey. But still, if anyone has any info about that area, any other stories tied to these gigantic toads, please post those comments below. That would be really awesome to hear. So, alright everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.